Alrighty, well, welcome to the McKinney-Vento Deeper Dive into Practice, session number 2. So this is the second time we are offering this training. Thanks for being with us here today. So first thought that we would introduce ourselves. My name is Joey Heilman. I use she, her pronouns. Today my hair is down, brown, and curly. I am white and I am wearing a gray cardigan. And I would like to pass it off to my coworkers to introduce themselves.
Morning, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. I'm so excited to have you all here. My name is Samie Iverson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a senior manager of education strategy, one of two, with Building Changes. And today I am wearing a gray sweater. I have dark brown, almost black hair, and I identify as a Korean American woman. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Mehret Tekle-Awarun. I am, new title change. I am the practice innovation lead here at Building Changes, getting used to that. It may change again. And I have my hair up in a bun, wearing striped blouse, black and white striped blouse. I am Black African, and I am glad that you are here today.
Thank you. All righty. So before we go any further today, we wanted to start off with the land acknowledgement. So we would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people who have stewarded this land since time immemorial and who still inhabit this area today. Building Changes specifically, although we do work statewide, our office is on the lands of the Duwamish and Coast Salish people. So my colleague will pop into the chat the native lands-CA. If you are able to look in that and see whose land you are on today. And then if you could also pop into the chat, maybe your name, your pronoun, your position, and whose land you're on, that would be great. And while we're all doing that, a couple of housekeeping things today. So first, please make sure that your name on Zoom reflects the name that you registered in PD Enroller with. This is for clock hour attendance, so it's important that those match. It's okay if you have extra things like your pronouns and your location in the name, but we need to make sure that like Joey Heilman is there. And you can change that by going to the little 3 dots above your video icon or above your video image and hit rename. Other things, please make sure that you keep muted if you are not speaking. Please take care of yourself, take breaks as you need. We will have one break in the middle. And then there is also a live transcript available. So if that is not already going for you, you should be able to go to the menu option and then next to the closed caption button and hit show subtitles or full transcript or both, whatever you prefer. You can change the size and you can also hide subtitles if they are on and you do not want to see them today. And then please use the reaction buttons. We're going to try and keep this as interactive as we can with a large group. We love seeing hearts, claps, whatever emoji you feel like putting on that resonates with you. You can do that from the bottom little button there, that kind of emoji icon. And then feel free to raise your hands, pop questions in the chat. And there's no such thing as bad question. We're going to try and answer all of them as best as we can. And if we can't answer it, we'll try and connect you with someone who can. And I'll pass it off to Samie.
Thanks, Joey. So just to get us started, we're going to do a couple of just introductory kind of refresher slides for you all today. Some of you may have heard of Building Changes, some may not. Just in case, we're a nonprofit working with and alongside communities across Washington state. I'm really interested in exploring intersections of systems serving young people, students, and families experiencing homelessness. Some of our work involves funding innovative ideas, providing TA, technical assistance, and training, project and program research and evaluation, and advocacy efforts that aim to change policies to strengthen implementation. Next slide, please. What you're going to see on the screen here is going to be our statement on racial equity. Building Changes has committed to center racial equity both internally and externally. We bring a targeted universalism lens to our work that was coined by John A. Powell, and it really acknowledges equity rather than equality. We no longer believe that everyone should receive the same level of support, but believe in prioritizing the needs of those most marginalized. By doing so, there's a universal benefit. And to be clear, it's not about preference. This is really just about acknowledging that people are situated differently and have varying needs. A simple example of what targeted universalism looks like in real life is ADA sidewalks that are built to accommodate wheelchairs with ramps. Those ramps also benefit skateboarders, strollers, and the wider community. And next slide, please. So this is an infographic that Building Changes put out, and it's just kind of a way today to start us off to ensure we're centering our students furthest from educational justice and access to resources and opportunities. What we know, and this was 2018-2019 data, but what we know is that there's around 42,000 students experiencing homelessness in Washington state. We know that roughly 3/4 of that population are students living doubled up, largely due to financial hardship with friends or family, which also means they won't qualify for mainstream housing services. And 6 out of 10 students experiencing homelessness are students of color. So our research has shown that doubled up students have equally poor academic outcomes as their literally homeless peers. And what that means is that housing stability is really a key factor in furthering student learning and academic outcomes. A key takeaway from this slide and from the moments that we're spending talking about this right now is really in our current system, if you're a student of color and you're living doubled up, you will most likely not be eligible for resources that could stabilize your housing and your education. This is a problem, and this is why our focus on equity and targeting students of color and developing strategies to best serve that population is absolutely vital. And that targeted universalism tone will benefit all students as well. Next slide, please. This, again, a lot of text on slides, but what we'd like you to know as we're joining you today is that, we may have been in the room back in the day in 2018, 2019. We were invited to partner with OSPI on the McKinney-Vento annual training, both in Tacoma, I believe, and Spokane. It's getting so hazy to remember back when we were all in the room together, and I do miss that. But we've had partnerships along the years with OSPI and are just really excited to continue our work together. We have signed a contract with them and we'll be providing 7 total trainings through now in September 2023. Each of those 7 trainings will be offered 4 times. We are a mighty team of 3 at Building Changes. Mehret, Joey, and I, we're passionate about preventing and ending student homelessness and supporting those advocating at every angle of this effort. We've all worked directly with students in some capacity in our careers and feel genuinely privileged to be with you all today and for future trainings. I'm going to kick it back to Joey now.
Alrighty, so we're gonna do a real quick Mentimeter, and we got this going a little bit in the chat, but it's fun to see it visually on the screen. So if you could follow this link that I'm popping in the chat here, or go to menti.com and type in the code that is at the top of this slide. It should take you to a kind of like poll looking page where you can put your where you're joining us from today. So what city, what town, we would love to see that pop up here on the screen. Looks like we have already a big spread, and I'm not seeing any overlap yet. So this is exciting. It's great to see such representation from across the state. All right, I'll give it another couple of minutes or a couple of seconds here. I love watching it move. I don't know if anyone else gets as much joy out of it as I do, but so fun. Got a few folks coming in from Seattle, Federal Way, Swim, New Sac Valley, Newport, Puyallup, Granite Falls, Port Angeles. We got all over the place. This is great. All right, gonna head to the next slide. Feel free to keep answering if it lets you. We will download these later for us to see.
I love looking at geography. It reminds me of places around Washington State I need to visit or find on the map. So it's always awesome to see where our partners are because it reminds us our reach and access partnerships. So my colleagues shared a little bit more, shared more about the information of today. Intentions behind having this MKV deeper dive training is informed by the OSPI annual training. Our goal is to really add additional space for peer support and learning, take time to explore pieces of MKV work that came up as challenges. And this is just a breakdown of what we plan on covering, the McKinney-Vento refresher. We're going to talk a little bit about unaccompanied youth, health and COVID learnings and updated reports for this second half, transportation and the challenges that it comes with. We're going to take a breather break. And for you, maybe a bio break, but we're going to take a moment to just pause and breathe and regroup and talk about McKinney-Vento building point of contact. Then applying to practice, we'll be in some breakout rooms, doing some near peer supports, discussions around what's working, and from there, we'll just check out. Again, the objectives of today, attendees will have the opportunity to revisit areas of the OSPI annual McKinney-Vento training, such as serving unaccompanied youth, health and COVID updates, to and from school transportation, McKinney-Vento contacts. Read off a couple of these pointers. Attendees will have additional tools to serve unaccompanied youth. Attendees will have the opportunity to network, strategize with colleagues across the state, which is very important because we know that it's not a cookie cutter way to providing supports. It's very unique, like we said, targeted universal. Every child is different, and it's really important to connect with your colleagues across the state to see what they're doing and how can we learn from each other. I always say we're lifelong learners here. Do we have any questions before we get into it? Feel free to unmute or write in the chat box. No questions? Okay, well, we hope they're percolating in the meantime.
So we have just a couple slides to get us grounded today in McKinney-Vento, as you all probably know by now. The thinking behind kind of today's content, we just want to make sure everyone's aware that all of us were able to attend the fall McKinney-Vento training that happens annually. And what we did is we really listened in to hear kind of what was coming up the most often. So if you have any kind of curiosity, kind of where this content or where our themes came from, it was directly from the McKinney-Vento liaisons and support staff attending that training. On purpose, as being past liaisons in some of our roles. It's something that we thought was extremely important. We also want to acknowledge that we know the way McKinney-Vento shows up in districts is going to vary greatly across Washington. You know, you can go from one district that has a couple FTEs full-time, you know, working at that district level to reach building points of contact. In other places, you have a 0.2 FTE, and that's been stacked onto another role. So we just want to make sure we're acknowledging just the range of this work and the role itself. So what we know is what you're going to see in this blue box is going to be we know that what McKinney-Vento is. We know it's a federal law that ensures immediate enrollment and educational stability for homeless children and youth. But on the other side, next to this box, what we also know is that this is a totally underfunded mandate. We know that McKinney-Vento programs are built to meet the needs of their districts, but look different. We know this work is super dynamic, highly unpredictable, and requires a really wide range of skills. We know it takes a village to serve the student population. And we definitely know, I would say more so in the last 2 years than ever, that staffing doesn't always match up with the need. Next slide. And this is just a quick refresher on the main tenants. What we know, you see the bullets on the left are going to be things that we focus on in McKinney-Vento, such as school access, stability, how critical the role of your local homeless education liaison is, how important community partnerships are. Again, though, what we also know is that every school building has its own culture, staff, and the way that McKinney-Vento serves the students in their building. We want to acknowledge that the needs of McKinney-Vento students are very unique, require additional creativity and advocacy. We know there's limitations on resources, and there's also limitations in capacity and role a lot of times. So we want that to be out there as well. And then the last slide is going to be just a quick reminder of who is eligible for this program. I know that I'm certain that a lot of people on this call today or in this training are very well versed in these bullets that you see on this slide. But what we would just like to always focus on, being that McKinney-Vento often lives in a very gray area. Those 3 words that we drive home are, is the student's place of residence at that time or where they're staying, is it fixed? Is it regular? And is it adequate? If any of those 3 are in question, then we most likely are working with a McKinney-Vento household. Next, we're going to be covering our next kind of part on unaccompanied youth.
I did just drop a link to one of the NACE FAQs for if you have more questions about McKinney-Vento. I know we have folks who have been in their role for many years, other folks who may be newer. So this is a resource for you to take a look at if you do have more questions.
So we're going to do an engagement activity. If you can briefly write a challenge you've overcome in partnership with the unaccompanied youth you've worked with in your role. So again, that's unique and specific to you and your community. So when you put it in, if you want to tell us maybe the region, that'd be great. But if not, we would just love to know a brief challenge you've overcome in partnership with supporting the unaccompanied youth. All right, I'm reading, stigmatizing that circumstances are due to lack of efforts, lack of parent engagement, understanding the unique needs of youth experiencing homelessness in our rural area, no parent involvement, and lack of parent communication, wishing we knew sooner to get them services ASAP. Okay, working with unaccompanied youth biological mother who does not have legal guardianship. Okay, unaccompanied youth is living with her. Working with college and scholarship requirements. Okay. And transportation for unaccompanied youth needs, not just school. All right, we're seeing the housing, no issues. Oh, someone's unmuted. Do you want to speak? Okay, so we're seeing housing, transportation, some legal complications, trust, medical appointments. No worries, okay. Now that housing under age 18 is difficult. And hopefully if we have some peers that have successful partnerships with housing providers to provide housing supports for that 16, 17 age group, we would love to hear during our breakout sessions how that has worked for you or how you made that happen. All right, we're going to move on to our next slide, our infographic. So I'm going to move this chat box, but feel free to continue to write. Well, here is our infographic. As you see, 1 in 10 young adults ages 18 to 25 endure some kind of homelessness in a year. 1 in 30 adolescent minors ages 13 to 17 endure some sort of homelessness in a year. And excuse me, sorry, my screen just froze up a little bit. About half of the youth who experience homelessness over a year face homelessness for the first time. So you see that there's a trend happening. We're seeing that more unaccompanied youth are continuing following that homelessness without being able to find housing supports. And we know that the law hasn't been supportive, but we're trying to find services and partners that do cover homelessness for unaccompanied youth. Next slide. Give me a second. Switch. All right, who is considered unaccompanied and unaccompanied youth? Not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. Unaccompanied youth are youth who are not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian or court-appointed guardian, including living with an adult who is not their parent and does not have legal custody of them. School may be the only safe, stable environment for unaccompanied youth. Again, it may be the only safe, stable environment for unaccompanied youth. So making sure that they're enrolled and staying in school is really important. They're eligible for service regardless of the reasons that led to separation from family, have the right to immediate enrollment without proof of guardianship, that they face many barriers to enrolling, attending, and succeeding in school. Next slide. The role of a liaison and school personnel. Working with unaccompanied youth, liaisons must help unaccompanied youth choose and enroll in school after considering the youth's wishes and inform the right of his or her appeal rights. School personnel must be made aware of the specific needs of runaway homeless youth. Systemic challenges for unaccompanied youth. Lack of resource and access for young people under the age of 18. Obviously, we saw that in the chat box that they're not able to sign a lease. Pursuing medical care can be challenging. We're going to have a little conversation about COVID vaccination and testing updates and resources that potentially are provided to them. Employment opportunities are limited. Oftentimes it's internet access, laptop application processes, background check, IDs. Emergency shelter access is contingent on family reunification and law enforcement presence. Family dynamic can be hard to navigate, and accessing health, safety, and behavioral health needs can be particularly challenging. Here are some resources for serving unaccompanied youth. We have some links. Right now is the season of FAFSA and applying for FAFSA. The opportunity of receiving the maximum Pell Grant, which right now I believe the maximum could be potentially $6,400, $6,495 per student for full enrollment. So, you know, there's Pell Grants that are going unused. And so it's really important, your high school counselor or your opportunity schools, whatever may be, opening that opportunity to apply for FAFSA right now. 2-year, 4-year, wherever direction they want to go to, there are funds available to them that could cover their tuition. So right now we're going to go into an activity. Let's brainstorm research that have been helpful, available to unaccompanied youth in Washington State. It could be around, I think I saw somebody saying providing medical resources. It could be license, job, hopefully some people have had some success finding housing resources for students. Feel free to unmute and speak, or you can write in the chat. You know, while that is percolating, I do want to share, just going back to the FAFSA, that being able to be that resource of providing them that internet support is really important. On the FAFSA, there is a marking where they can check off for unaccompanied youth. And once they check off that unaccompanied youth portion, it will minimize the rest, where it's asking for parents' income and other opportunities that can be very overwhelming and could potentially just cause that child to not want to fill out the FAFSA. So, you know, navigating that with them would be a great support to successfully making sure they're receiving those resources to continuing school or a program. And so I see in the chat boxes that dental and vision care, housing, and IP card. You want to explain that a little bit? Were you able to provide them for your school district, or were you able to lean in on a partner?
And feel free to unmute and share at any point.
That's me. I didn't plan on talking in front of everybody. The resources that have been very helpful to me up here in this rural town that I live in is just having connections with local optometrists and dentists that are very open to working with me as the representative for the unaccompanied youth. Many times prior to getting these relationships, the doctors would not see the kids that I worked with. And so just a lot of education about my role and legal, just my legal responsibility to take care of these kids that are unaccompanied has been very helpful. Also working with the local Department of licensing, making a connection with the manager of that department and explaining to her why I'm working with these kids. And she's been very open to helping me get them their ID cards.
That's awesome. Thank you. It reminds me of the day when I was doing McKinney-Vento support, and we had a relationship with our local Department of Licensing, where on Tuesdays we would go and provide those licensing and ID, photo ID supports. Oh, and I see Kayla Kayla's in the chat box talking about that. Yes. Local managers, DOL local managers at MPD to explain the student situations. Does anyone else want to share some key relationships or ways that they were able to provide resources in your community?
For me, it's been connection to community resources and service groups. So we're a pretty predominantly retired community. But thankfully, through educating and destigmatizing these kids and these families, we've been able to get more service groups to provide volunteer works, to do fundraisers for clothing and hygiene and feminine hygiene products. And then they're interested in building like a 72-hour emergency shelter, which in our city, we have 0 shelters for homeless families, women, children, anything. So that's been huge. And then educating and partnering with the city to accomplish that too. So it's all outside resources that we mostly rely on with service groups and nonprofits.
Thank you. Yeah, we're hearing that from a lot of our smaller communities where they are relying on their aging or retirement population to provide those resources. So it's very special. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, so we're going to move on to our next slide. So in the chat, here's another engagement activity. The chat, on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable do you feel providing medical consent amidst this pandemic? 1, not at all, not comfortable at all. 5, I'm totally comfortable. I mean, you could just put the number, you could throw in some halves if you want to, 1.5, 2.5, feel free to do that. But just on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 not comfortable at all, 5 totally comfortable, providing medical consent. And if you didn't know you could provide medical consent, you could say not know. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to introduce my amazing colleague, Megan. She's the Senior Manager of Policy Advocacy and Research at Building Changes. She leads the policy work, and this upcoming session, we're especially focused on 1, ensuring young people experiencing homelessness can access healthcare, and 2, that schools and CBOs have the funding they need to best support students experiencing homelessness. Megan, you're up.
Thank
for
you,
being
Mehret.
here.
Yeah, thank
We had
you.
a busy session, so we appreciate her.
No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Great. So as Mehret said, I do the policy work at Building Changes, and I just wanted to give folks kind of an update on the data that we're seeing out of the Department of Health around COVID for children and youth, and then just some more information on consent for COVID vaccines and testing. Every week, the Department of Health will update a report that they've been putting around cases among children and youth in Washington State. And so the most recent one was, I believe it was from February, either 2nd or 3rd. And this was some of the key findings from that report. And this is looking at data from January 9th of this year to January 23rd. So the key findings in that report were that there were around 78,000 cases, that case rates are continuing to increase, and that the highest case rates were in ESD 123, which is Pasco, Tri-City, Walla Walla area, and that 11 to 13-year-olds had the highest case rates. There was also 257 hospitalizations, and hospitalization rates were increasing. And in January, there were a total of 13 deaths among all children and youth in Washington State. Luckily, even though the report hasn't put out yet, there is data showing that the case rates and hospitalization rates are going down right now. There was a big surge in January, but it is starting to decrease a bit. Next slide, please. The report also does some interesting stuff because it actually breaks the case rates and case counts down by ESD, which I don't know of any other state actually that's been doing that. So it's really good information. As you can see here, as I mentioned earlier, the highest case rates again are in ESD 123 with a case rate of a little over 5,000 per 100,000 children. Next slide, please. This also shows data by ESD versus with age group. So it goes for preschool, elementary school, middle school, and high school. And the link to, I know that they'll be sending out slides afterwards. If you want to get more information and look at the report is included down below. Next slide, please. So this is around vaccinations in Washington State. So as of January 31st, this was for the entire population of 5 and up. In Washington State, around 79.9% of the population had received at least 1 dose of the COVID vaccine, and 72% were fully vaccinated. It also breaks this down by age group. So the ages 5 to 11, there's a little over 33% of those young kids that are getting their first vaccine, and 26% are fully vaccinated. The percentages increase the older you go, mostly because the vaccine was available for those older kids much more recently than the younger kids. Next slide, please. So some of the, it's been really confusing and a lot of misinformation going around about how to help young people fight COVID-19, especially if they're unaccompanied homeless youth. So luckily, most people are now eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Their consent from a parent or guardian is often required, but as we know, most unaccompanied homeless youth do not have someone to consent for them if they're under 18. Luckily, state law allows McKinney-Vento liaisons, school nurses, and school guidance counselors to provide consent for certain types of healthcare for this population, including immunizations. And for more information, we have created some flyers. We received a grant from the Department of Health to work on some flyers on how to schools can help unaccompanied homeless youth get vaccinated. So we have some flyers there. It's translated into Spanish as well. And then OSPI has a really good bulletin out that I also include the link for here that provides a sample form that schools can use to get informed consent and share it with medical providers. Next slide, please.
Real quick, I do want to pause, and we have a question in the chat about if ESTs have relatively the same number of students residing in their boundaries. And I am not 100%
Actually, don't know that. I don't know the answer to that question.
I want to say I don't think so, only because in the meetings I'm in, they're always talking about the two larger school district, but I don't know what the rest of them, if they're relatively the same. So I the smaller school district, but like ESD 121 and maybe 113 is probably the two largest. So maybe they're relatively similar, but and 121 is, you know, Seattle and Tacoma. So yeah, I want to say I don't think so, but we can find that out.
Great, thank you. And so here are some, again, this is kind of from the sample informed consent form from OSPI's website as well as our flyers, but this is how you can help provide consent for unaccompanied homeless youth. So one of the things is to help the student connect to a youth-friendly vaccine provider, and the Department of Health on their vaccine locator tool actually has done some surveys among vaccine providers across the state, asking them if they are youth-friendly and are able to really help young people get access to the vaccine. An important thing to do once you've found someone that's willing to provide the vaccine for a young person is to figure out how that provider accepts consent. Can it be verbal? Can it be over the phone? Does it have to be written? Does an adult have to be in person with that young person? And then you can talk to the student and explain them about the law that allows you to consent to them for get the COVID-19 vaccine. While it's not required, we have heard that it's really helpful to print out the informed consent law, which I put down there for you all. That says that McKinney-Vento liaison, school nurse, and school counselors can provide informed consent, and like highlighting the portion, like naming the school nurses, school counselors, and homeless student liaisons. That's been really helpful. Again, not required, but OSPI has a really helpful sample informed consent form to fill out. That's also really helpful in educating medical providers on that you're allowed to do this for the young person. I think that might be the last slide.
So there is one more question in the chat, Megan. So wondering if the liaison consent for testing as well.
Yes, there is in the statute. That does cover testing. It's a lot about primary care and preventative care. So. But again, a medical provider may not agree with that. And so I would still work with the medical provider and talking to them about that to really help them get tested. The statute itself is very broad, which is great. So it includes a lot of types of healthcare. And so that should be included under there. But again, if a provider says that, they don't want to do that, then, provider does have the right to refuse that. And so that's why it's really important to make sure you're connecting with a youth-friendly vaccine provider. And I would also talk to, your folks within the schools too, to just see if that's kind of something that other people have been able to get or not.
Great, thank you so much, Megan. If there are any other questions that come up, please feel free to put them in the chat or reach out to us after the session or in breakout rooms. We can continue trying to help connect. There is one more question, Megan, while we're still here. Is there any sort of identification that school counselors or folks providing the consent should bring into these appointments? So I'm thinking that question's asking like your work ID, your like some sort of.
That's a great question. It's not required, but I do think it would help. It would definitely help. A lot of kind of what we're hearing, especially when it comes to folks that are not like primary care doctors. So a lot of the vaccine providers, if they're not familiar with the young person, like it can be a little bit of a challenge in getting access to like the vaccine. And a lot of people are not aware of the state law that allows McKinney-Vento liaisons and others to consent for unaccompanied homeless youth. And so anything you do to help provide more information and alleviate any concerns providers may have would be helpful. Again, it's not required, but it would definitely be helpful.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we're gonna move into the next section now. So transportation, we want to acknowledge that we've heard from liaisons across the state that there's been like just unprecedented challenges with transportation this year. And I know that there are a plethora of reasons for that. So just, making sure that you all are indescribably important and vital in making sure our McKinney-Vento students get to and from school. So thank you for leaning into these challenges and helping students get to school. So we got another just quick chat. On average, what % of your phone calls and emails are transportation related on behalf of McKinney-Vento students? Anywhere from 0 to 100%, or maybe 150% if you're really feeling like transportation is everything right now. 85, yep. And also recognizing that some districts have more staffing in their transportation department. So maybe this isn't on you as much. And we can see that that is definitely varying district to district. And also recognizing we have all sorts of different folks in the room right now. Not everyone is a McKinney-Vento liaison. So maybe you are not doing any transportation because that's not your role as a school counselor. So, all right. Looks like Megan just dropped some more language on the healthcare consent as well in the chat, if you want to take a look at that. All right, so moving into this transportation section, we want to kind of give a little bit of a framing for it. So before you can organize transportation, you need to know where the student is going and getting enrolled. So it's kind of a two-step process here. First is the school selection, and then transportation. So school selection includes the concept of best interest as it appears in the McKinney-Vento Act. And this relates to a student's school selection options, including the school of origin and local attendance area schools. So Samie will go into that a little bit more in a second. And then you can, once they're enrolled, you can go into transportation. So really thinking about the LEA's legal requirement to provide McKinney-Vento students with transportation to and from school at the request of the parent or guardian or the unaccompanied youth, if that is their case. And then I'm also going to drop a brief in the chat that can help give a little more details into this while Samie goes into the next slide.
So what we know is that there are all kinds of things that on a daily basis, but this is a really big piece of the federal mandate, I would say. Best interest determination and school selection. So first and foremost, making these decisions is not easy. It's on behalf of students. It's often you're working directly with a student or directly with their household. And I think I just kind of fall back on something I learned in the School of Social Work, which is really thinking about systems theory, and which coincides really well with the whole child approach, if that's utilized in your district. But it's really this idea that we want to think about the entire student. We want to think about their friend and family network. We want to think about their whole community. And when we're making, you know, when we're advocating for students or having to help them make decisions, that we're really taking that into consideration, that really unique experience of each and every student. So where I'm going to start with on this slide is just defining school of origin. So the term school of origin means the school that the child or youth attended last when permanently housed. Or it could be the school in which the child or youth was last enrolled, including preschool. The school of origin additionally includes the designated receiving school at the next grade level for all feeder schools when a child or youth completes the final grade level served by the school of origin. When I first read this as a liaison, it was a little bit overwhelming, I'm just going to be honest. But what that means is we just want to think about where the student is coming from, their ties to that school, and have that be part of the determination that's made. We wanted to highlight, in also partnership with OSPI, there is this presumption out there that the school of origin is always in the best interest of the student. And that is not always the case. So really, again, kind of falling back on listening really carefully, being really considerate of how that decision's made, and being mindful of what that school of origin is and what it means for that family. In a best interest determination, the district must do a few things based on indicators found in the federal guidance. And it's basically to determine if it's in the best interest of the student to remain in their school of origin. So what I'm gonna default to is the text you're seeing on the slide. Again, kind of accentuating that individualized case-by-case decision-making. But those student-centered factors to consider when making these decisions or helping make these decisions are really as listed in the, federal language. When determining a child or youth's best interest, an LEA must consider student-centered factors, including factors related to the impact of mobility on achievement, education, health and safety of the homeless children and youth, giving priority to the request of the child's or youth's parent or guardian. If that is an unaccompanied youth, then it would be the youth directly. And another piece of this is that it is encouraged to also consider the school placement of siblings when making that determination. So this is just something that we really wanted to highlight, both because it's, again, not an easy decision to make, but there is some federal guidance that will help you in working with students and families to make sure whatever school you are going to coordinate transportation to, that decision has been really thoughtful and will set the student up their best to achieve academically. I'm now going to pass it off to Mehret.
All right, thank you. So we're going to be thinking outside of the bus. We know everywhere across the state, there's a driver shortage, school bus driver shortage. It's happening across the state, the country. It's worse than ever. We know that COVID is sticking around. We're going to continue to have additional names for the different variants. We know that entire routes are being canceled. So we want to think about what are your alternative options. So one, offering in lieu transportation for parents or a provider, a guardian to drive student to and from school. Transportation agreement and mileage stipend. We know that there are flexible dollars, and I'm going to give an example of one of my former schoolhouse Washington grantee, Tequila, through a grant that we provided some time ago. They were able to purchase a van to support students awaiting transportation. So that was in partnership with their transportation team. They have an in-house transportation team that was able to provide like the logistics, the mechanics, all of that services that need to be met to owning the van. So that was a perfect way. And then when COVID happened, they were able to use that same van to providing homework, support, food to the same population and then some. If you have a communities and schools partnership, as you know, they just received a very, very large gift from McKinsey Scott, I was going to call her former name. And so they could be considered your community transportation hub or a provider that can support other means of transportation. If you don't have that partnership with communities and schools, you might want to get on that because it's a good amount of money that they've received. And I think our local chapter also received a good chunk of that. Considering the child's IEP, again, that's an individual education program, working with that team. Hopefully some of you are a part of that team. It's responsible for determining both if transportation is required to assist a child with a disability, to benefit from special education and related services, and how the transportation services should be implemented. Again, that's being very unique and child-centered. Holding a space for conversations related to transportation with MKV households, capturing creative solutions to share with there. So let's talk. What is working for you? And that opportunity to get kids to school, staying in school without any delays. So the name of that transportation funding, it actually wasn't a transportation funding. It was our Schoolhouse Washington grant, where I have 3 school districts in South King County. And part of their funding, they were able to utilize about, if they're on here, Julia, Marion, if you're here, please feel free to speak up. They had about $25,000 of money that they wanted to direct towards creating a van for transportation. Well, the one that I just mentioned, that might be a great partnership to have if you don't have one already. It's Communities and Schools Washington, and trying to find out which one of your satellites are closest to you because they are expanding their reach. I know Communities and Schools Renton is now Issaquah and Tequila, and a couple of others are expanding their reach. So yeah, let's talk. What's working for you? How are you getting kids to school while they're waiting their district transportation?
Hi. I'm not sure if everyone has Gear Up at their schools, but mine is actually connected. I have a middle school and a high school connected, and we have WSU Gear Up leaders there for both the middle school and the high school, and they've actually offered up their transportation vans to give students rides to and from school, which is really great. A lot of our school students in the McKinney-Vento program are also seeking extra tutoring. And so it just kind of works a lot more seamlessly for us.
And just for those who may not know where Gear Up is, or they don't know that that partnership exists, do you mind sharing, Brittany, where you're located, the school district that you work at? Sorry.
Sure, yeah. I'm at College Place School District in Walla Walla County. WSU Gear Up is actually, it is from WSU, Washington State University. It is a program meant to help students become college ready, and pretty much it's a feeder program to send students of lower income into colleges. The hope is definitely work with them. I actually used to be a Gear Up tutor, and we also work with other schools it's just our hope that students attend college. So it's just it's a program that's been around for a few years. It's a grant. Who run it are very helpful, and they're in a lot of schools in Washington.
Thank you, Brittany, for explaining that. I appreciate it. So it's a shameless plug for a Gear Up program and expanding that partnership if you need it. Thank you. Any other successful transportation partnerships out there that you can share, maybe using your faith-based or other community transportation hubs?
Mehret, I'm seeing a few chats in there. We have Peggy from OSPI asking about Hop Skip Drive, as well as Vanessa also linking to Hop Skip Drive.
Hi, it's Sarah from Spokane. I would say I mean, it still sucks so bad for us, but I think the key, I'm on a transportation work group for our district because we're coming up on the end of our contract with our busing provider. So it's just a good time to reevaluate. And for the past few months, the essential moral to the story is diversity. Like you need to have options that are available and need to have processes to enact those options. So you need to have bus drivers, buses, public transportation, maybe vans in lieu of contracts, cab contracts, hop, skip, drive, and really just working on that diversity and how you do that diversity. And well, it's not working great yet. That's where I see the future going and just being more intentional with that diversity.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. That's, really great opportunity to be on the advocacy side of things, joining that transportation work group at your district and amplifying the voice of that alternative needs towards transportation and what makes sense for our specific student population. So if you can get invited to a work group or just invite yourself to join that, I think that'd be an amazing opportunity. So when interim transportation is not in place yet, excuse me, I understand the barriers to using non-school transportation. We do want to share that OSPI McKinney-Vento office does not endorse the ride share as a practice for school-based transportation. We understand that there's liability to the district and requirements for anyone who's alone with a child, background check, fingerprinting, and that whole nine. Cover basics of transportation, but then have some strategies. So again, working with your community service providers or the parent, the child, if it's unaccompanied youth, and seeing how can I get you to school and stay here. Call to action, advocate to create policies to pursue alternative modes of transportation for your school district. Sarah just hit it when she said she's part of a transportation work group. So that's an awesome way to start at a local level, but I think working on the state level will help too, or maybe even we create our own shameless plug of McKinney-Vento liaisons on transportation work groups. Statewide, it might be nice too. So that is our transportation. Now we're gonna.
Oh, can I say something else? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I just learned of it. So within the our state budget stuff right now, there's a proposal coming through to be able to provide formulary grants to communities who offer free public transportation for youth under age 18. That's being proposed. And so I'm trying to get the bill number to go through, but I can't I don't have the right people yet, but it's in proposal to be able to add that to our state budget. So anyways, I thought it would be really cool if you guys want to look that up. It's a great one.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, whenever you find it, or we might even ask, let's see if Megan might know it. And then we'll share that out with the group so we can watch it and see what we can do to support it. All right, I think we're going into our breather break unless there's last minute questions around transportations.
All righty. So yeah, Sarah Miller, when you can share a link or something for that bill, we would love to dive into it a little bit more. And we're gonna take a break right now. We're gonna come back at 10:10. Or 11:10. I don't know what time it is. So come back and join us at 11:10. I'm gonna pause the recording during the break, so when we come back and restart, you'll hear it talking again. But we'll see you in about 9-10 minutes. the little recording in progress voice is just so funny to me. All right, so, all right. If you are here and able to turn your camera on, that helps me know that you are back in the space. So if you're comfortable turning your camera on, letting me know you're back from break, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. And we are back. Yay, look at all those faces. Love it. All right. So, Samie, would you like to kick us off with part 2 here? Love hearing all these people coming back. Thank you.
Sounds great. I always get nervous that no one's going to come back after break, so it's great to see everyone's face. Next section is going to be talking a little bit about McKinney-Vento building points of contact. Get us plugged back in. We have a little activity in the chat. And I would love for you all to just think about a McKinney-Vento building point of contact that you're working with. So someone in one of your school buildings that you enjoy, that you appreciate. And then in the chat, share a trait with the group about what it is they do that you would love to see in all McKinney-Vento building points of contact. Thanks, Pam, for kicking us off. Passion for the work, for the kids and the family. I think that's a great one. Regular check-ins, actual follow-up. I love that, Danielle. Flexibility and compassion. Understanding the importance of confidentiality for the families we're working with. Easy to communicate. Again, communication across kind of that whole community of people involved, super important. I think as we reflect on the people in our buildings working with our students, it really sounds like there's just a lot of themes of what's important, which is communicating, having passion for the work, and really understanding kind of what that student's going through and being able to advocate for them. We're going to go to our next slide. And before we do, I just want to say, Brittany chimed in, work to have the SOAR grant brought to our high school to provide students a safe place to spend the school day. Great example. Really just thinking about how to be mindful about what students' needs are and make sure to kind of go that extra distance to build safe spaces. I think that's a great example. Brittany, thanks for sharing. So again, this is going to be the RCW that you'll see on the screen in front of you. I'm not going to read through it exactly, but what we want to highlight really from this slide is that McKinney-Vento building points of contact are appointed by the principal. They must be established in every school. Their focuses are really identification and serving as a connection to your district level McKinney-Vento liaison. The liaison is ultimately responsible for training building points of contact, and OSPI is committed to offering best practices as well. What we'd also like to highlight really quick is there is a new building points of contact training coming up on February 23rd. You'll see in the chat how you'll be able to access that information. And hold on really quick. The file that I was in just disappeared, so I'm just trying to get back there. So another thing that I think that we also really want to be excited about, even though it is kind of a tricky role, Washington State is the only state that has this in legislation that I'm aware of. So I think that that just really speaks to our state's commitment in this work, and really both helps there be an on-the-ground person embedded in a school to help McKinney-Vento students, as well as, you know, the liaison, district liaison has a big job, and it helps to kind of share the weight of that role as well. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a couple bullets highlighting what that role can look like. I know we talked about it in the refresher slides at the very beginning, but this McKinney-Vento building point of contact role is not usually ever a standalone role. This is going to be responsibilities tacked on to an additional role that you already have in your building. So this is a really great thing to highlight and to know just in terms of capacity. A lot of times, I think it's safe to say that these McKinney-Vento building points of contact are extra passionate in terms of devoting their time to really providing extra support and care to those students. I also, on the bottom of this slide, you're going to see a link to OSPI training slides for McKinney-Vento building points of contact. There will be new slides uploaded very soon. So this is from a past training, but just if you want some more additional information on what this could look like. I know that I mentioned that this is tacked onto existing roles. I also forgot to highlight, there's no additional pay involved in taking on that responsibility. This is really kind of work of the heart in a lot of ways. And oftentimes this role is taken on by school counselors, family liaisons, school social workers, or student support staff of some kind. So we're really lucky today, next slide, to have a guest join us who is a McKinney-Vento building point of contact in Tacoma Public Schools. I had the pleasure of working with this individual when I worked there as a McKinney-Vento liaison. He's a super committed advocate, a trusted leader in his building and district when it comes to serving those eligible for McKinney-Vento services. And I think he really exemplifies what it looks like to truly center individual needs of students, specifically young people. So welcoming Kyle. I know we were having some issues with your camera. So
hello.
we're just looking for you to say, yeah, there you are.
Yeah, sorry, I guess maybe the district has blocked Zoom from using the camera, but I couldn't get it to work. Tried a few times. But I can talk at least.
We're just, sorry, what was that?
The mic does work, apparently.
Pretty loud and clear. I'm super happy you're here. So what we're gonna do is we have about 10 minutes, a couple of questions for Kyle to just kind of have you hear about his role a little bit, but then we're also going to open it up for questions from you all. If anything comes up, drop them into chat and we'll do the best we can to get those questions to Kyle. So the first question is, how does having a McKinney-Vento building point of contact benefit students in your building or even in your district?
Well, definitely benefits students, of course, to have that person in their building they can connect with, hopefully build a relationship with and trust, to be able to talk about their situation, their living situation and other needs they might have, and someone to help guide them through, connect to resources, support them through their education and through the process of connecting with housing supports and things like that. So just a person to kind of guide them through that process and be there for them through it and advocate for them and make sure they're getting, the support that they really need. And of course, at the district level, it's great to be able to have someone to collaborate, someone to identify, the students, first of all, that would qualify for McKinney-Vento supports and get them connected to the resources they need and really collaborate and communicate well with the district McKinney-Vento liaisons. And for the building in general, just having that person to be that kind of go-between between the district, the student, the resources, it kind of reduces the strain on the building.
I think right along with your response, as we've talked about kind of how this is a tricky role, how do you balance the responsibilities of your role as a social worker in your building, as well as a McKinney-Vento building point of contact?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely a lot. As a social worker, it fits, pretty well, because I'm already doing work on housing, already passionate about that. So it makes sense. I'm already connecting students to resources. It makes sense for a social worker to be that connection and that liaison. I know it's not always a social worker. It doesn't always, it wouldn't always be as easy to balance. And even with all the extra paperwork, there's a lot of extra paperwork, being that building point of contact that I wouldn't have to do otherwise. So that is a balance. I've had to give up certain, committees and things like that to really focus on the students more and to be able to have time to do some of that paperwork. So. You want me to say more?
Yeah. Oh, I was just like, I haven't seen a question, and then we had one come through. So in the chat, Vivian's asking, Kyle, how many McKinney-Vento students on average are you serving in your building annually?
That's a really good question, Vivian. I feel like so our school, we get new students every week. So we're identifying new students every week. I would like to look at that and see throughout the year, because we do also lose some throughout the year, sadly. But at any given time, there are probably around 30, around 30%. We usually have 100 to 150 students enrolled. So it's typically, 25 to 30% of our students are McKinney-Vento qualified.
Thanks for answering that one on the fly.
Yeah.
But we have a
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, you're all good. I was just really excited about this other question that just popped into the chat, which is, I want to say Marin. I hope I'm saying your name correctly, from Squim. What does your ideal relationship with the district McKinney-Vento liaison look like? And who does what tasks?
It's a great question, and I would like to be in Squim, more often. Less rain, right? It's great up there. So ideally, it's someone who is a great collaborator and reaches out and gets out into the buildings. So it's not just an email relationship. It's someone who's there, comes by to support sometimes, and really is good at collaborating and deciding who's going to do what. Oh, he said who does what tasks? Yeah, so it's really a decision based on what's already being done, what I'm already doing, and what is needed. So it's usually a conversation with the liaisons I work with at the district, and we kind of talk it through. And then do they share the list of MV students? They do. Actually, ours do share the list of MV students regularly with me.
I feel like you got Vivian. There's one more.
More?
What are some of the best ways? You got it? What are some of the best ways building points of contact can be supported by McKinney-Vento staff? Great question.
Yeah, just maintain a constant connection. Again, get out into the buildings, seeing their faces now that it's safer to do so is really big. And doing that communicating of who's going to do what, and also really advocating for funding when it's needed. A lot of times they have an ability to get access to certain funds like title funds and things like that to support students, and so that's big. Someone who's willing to go to bat if it's a kind of out of the box situation, think creatively, figure out how to get the needs met.
I have another little question if you're happy to answer this, Kyle.
I'm happy.
What is one thing you wish was in place for McKinney-Vento students?
I mean, one thing I really wish is more access to transitional housing programs without long wait times. So we have a great program in Tacoma called the Arlington Youth Apartments for young people aged 18 to 24. We have a lot of unaccompanied youth that are staying in cars, couch surfing, whatever it might be, staying in shelters for long periods of time, waiting to get into places like that or to other housing programs, and there just isn't enough to meet the need. So more transitional support as far as just streamlined ability to get students in without the long wait times.
We had one more question come through from Dimitri, and he would like to know if you could talk about how you build relationships or connections with service providers in your community.
Just get out there, go meet them where they're at or over Zoom. Hopefully your camera will work when you do it. But yeah, getting out there and joining coalitions when possible. I know it's not always possible. Like I was saying, I've dropped some of those in the past couple of years. But yeah, just getting out there and making those connections. And sometimes that connection leads to another connection, and asking them, what their ideas are on other connections.
One last question, Kyle. What's one thing you wish was in place for McKinney-Vento building points of contact?
I mean, I've said this before, but a stipend would be great. I mean, we have people in every building that gets like a tech stipend for being kind of a tech support person who does a little bit of minor tech support. It'd be great if possible, especially for staff that aren't already doing housing work. It'd be great for them to have that incentive, to work really hard to identify students and support them and get compensated for it a little bit.
We have 2 more minutes, and we have a couple more in the chat, but it sounds like we might have a fellow Tacoma person in the room. Danielle's asking, what does a typical day look like for you now between COVID issues and the housing crisis, especially in Tacoma?
Yes, a typical day. Wow, it's different every day, but I will say, yeah, the COVID issues have been interesting. Right now, the housing crisis combined with the mental health crisis that we're seeing for young people is just exploding, and that intersection is really tough for our students who lack stable housing and are going through mental health issues and mental health crisis. Those two combined, I spend a lot of my time on every day, connecting to mental health resources, walking students down to comprehensive life resources down the street so they can get mental health support, behavioral health support, and connecting with housing supports. So kind of doing those two things has been big. And it wasn't as, I feel like something happened the second year of COVID where the mental health crisis just kind of blew up. And the housing, with the eviction moratorium ending and the housing crisis got worse too. So both those things I feel like are huge right now. And that's at least half my day.
There's one more, if we can do it extra quick. What community connection do you find yourself using most frequently in supporting your students, Kyle? This is from Vivian.
I would have said a little while ago, I would have said the Reach Center. and when it was open. Right now it's not. I mean, you can connect with the services. The center is not actually open, but that's like a one-stop shop where you can get support for mental health, substance use, housing. They have the ACT Youth Homelessness Prevention Program out of there, barista training, a lot of stuff there. So that's probably the top resource in Tacoma for young people. I work with 16 to 21-year-olds, and that's their wheelhouse. Lately, though, it's been getting them into wherever I can get them for mental health services quickly. So a lot of suicide thoughts, a lot of serious mental health issues going on. A lot of our students are struggling. So that's probably lately what I've been connecting students with the most is comprehensive life resources down the street, as well as community health and some other programs.
Thank you so much for joining us. We did miss being able to see you, but what you've shared is so important and the best and only way to really highlight what this work looks like and what those needs are for students in our buildings right now.
Thank you all for everything you're doing as well. And you just got to hear wonderful Tacoma Avenue right next door here. I'll mute my mic now.
Thank you, Kyle, so much.
All righty. So thank you again, Kyle. So great to have you. Hopefully we can see your face another time soon. So we're going to jump into the what we're calling our applying to practice section. So we're going to get really interactive here, get into breakout rooms and all of that. So we want to use this time to strategize together. We're going to use the remaining time in breakout rooms until about 11:55, and then we're hoping that you can use this time to strategize with your peers, discuss what you've learned in this presentation, or more questions you might have. This is also a great opportunity to pose questions about maybe scenarios or situations that you are trying to problem solve in your school right now, in your community, and really get that peer support. And with that, I do want to suggest that you exchange contact information with the people in your breakout rooms if you have started a conversation and 20 minutes just isn't enough, because it's probably not. So please feel free to exchange emails if you're comfortable to be able to continue these conversations. And if you've got to leave for lunch duty, that's part of working in a school. So thanks for joining us today. We are breaking out the rooms based on community type today, and we broke the communities out based on the definitions from the National Center for Education Statistics. So we've got city, suburban, town, and rural, with some examples of who may fall into each category. If you look at that and you're like, no, I don't think that represents my community, join a different room, totally fine. Go where you feel like your peers will be able to relate to your community the best. So in order to do that, I'm going to be opening the breakout room, and you'll see that breakout rooms button on the bottom of your screen. It'll pop up with the name of each room, and you'll hit join, or it might be a number. So we'll have a building changes person in each room to kind of help get the conversation going if needed. And let me open those up for you. And if you do have issues joining a room today, and it doesn't let you join yourself, please just message me directly about which room you would like to be moved into, and I will try and move you over there myself. So we'll see you all at about 11:55. Have great conversations. All right, so I've got a couple requests to add to a breakout room. Make sure to tell me which room you would like to be added to, and I will add you over there. Tina and Mike, I see you. One minute. Perfect. All right, I'm moving ya. Mike wants to go. Oh.
And Joey, I'm probably gonna sign off unless you think it would be beneficial for me to join them.
Up to you. If you want to pop into a room, feel free. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's so always great to have you. So
Thanks, Joey. Yeah, see you soon. Hopefully next time the camera will work.
yeah.
I know Microsoft Teams works perfectly. I think it's a, monopoly issue.
Oh, yep, there it is.
Yeah. All right,
All
take
right.
care.
Thanks for coming.
Yep, bye.
Bye. All right, for the folks remaining in the room, maybe I missed your request on where to join. Just let me know if you'd like me to place you into a room. And if so, which one? All right, we're gonna have folks trickling in over the next minute while the breakout rooms are closing. So just hang tight while we all join back in. All right, we got about 20 seconds before everyone will be back. So hope you had some good conversations. All right, here comes the flood of everyone. All right, I think that we have everyone back, so welcome. Hope you had some great conversations, and I'm sure some of them got cut off there, and hopefully you have a way to continue them. Now we're gonna do a last little Mentimeter. So I dropped the link in the chat again, and I call these golden nuggets. So what is a golden nugget from your breakout conversations? This can also include a golden nugget from the day. And when I say golden nugget, I'm thinking something that you're gonna take from today and take with you moving forward. So I'd love to hear your golden nuggets, and we'll give that a couple of minutes for folks to enter those in. You can enter more than once. And hopefully it'll come up on my screen here. All right, golden nuggets coming in hot. Making sure we're defining roles and duties district-wide, making sure you're all on the same page. Absolutely. Amazing people doing this work statewide. That is so true. Shout out to everyone here. Communication, community resource groups and coalitions, mental health fund, resources for mental health services is huge. Be a resource, be kind, follow up. Advocates are doing their job advocating for clients. And also on that state level, people are going above and beyond, focusing on the health of staff too, 100%. We're not caring for ourselves. How can we care for our students and families? When you don't have the resources, create a group. The scrolling is a little hard to read, but variety of works being provided throughout the communities. I want that. There we go. How to and create asset maps and resource mapping within your community. Community-based partnerships to increase capacity. Got some resource sharing. This is awesome. I'll give it another minute, and I'm not going to continue to try and read all of them because I think I'm making a fool of myself, but kind of fun. So I'm gonna click to the next one, and we're gonna finish it off for today. Oh, if it will let me change slides. All right, so in closing today, first of all, thank you for sharing your time with us. We know it is so valuable, so we really appreciate you joining us today. There will be a survey in PD Enroller, so we really use these evaluations. A, they're for you to get clock hours, so please fill it out for those clock hours. And B, we're using them to continue to revise and iterate these trainings to make sure they're still meeting your needs. So please fill that out, give us feedback. To kind of jump back to what feedback we received from round one, there was requests for more on transportation, which I hope we added in for you. And then more creative housing solutions, which I'm going to plug our next training, Navigating the Housing System, which is coming up on March 2nd. You can find it in PD Enroller or through that VC trainings page link that Samie dropped in the chat. And then meeting the needs of special populations. We also have another training coming up later in the spring that will talk about some more specific student populations. So take a look at that. And then another plug for our school housing network. If you are a part of it, we'll see you, I think tomorrow is our next school housing network. And if you're not, we would love to have you. So the school housing network is a community group that we have put together monthly to bring schools and community-based organizations together into the same space to network. Wild that that's the title. So the link is also in the chat to join the school housing network, and we'll try and send that link out as soon as possible if you sign up. And then here's our contact information for if you have any questions, please feel free to email us. Also make sure that you have that homeless ed at k12.wa.us email. That is the OSPI homeless ed team, and they are full of knowledge. So please email them with your questions as well. They are there to help you. And so are we. So please, yeah, reach out if you need. And thank you so much for being here today. Today. The slides will be posted on PD Enroller in the next couple of days for you to access. And that's that for today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you all.